This is the summary of New Moon, summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Archie. Introduction. Every love story carries with it the promise of joy, but also the risk of heartbreak. In New Moon, that risk takes center stage, pulling the reader into a world where devotion and despair walk side by side. The story begins in Forks, Washington, where Bella Swan is still navigating her place in a life split between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Having found love with Edward Cullen, she should feel safe and complete, yet shadows linger over their happiness. The promise of forever is threatened not only by danger from outside forces, but also by the fragile line between mortality and immortality that defines their relationship. Where twilight painted the first brushstrokes of attraction, curiosity, and the reckless pull of first love, New Moon plunges deeper into the consequences of that choice. It is a novel steeped in loss, silence, and the aching emptiness that follows when something vital is torn away. Through Bella's eyes, readers feel the shattering weight of absence, the way grief reshapes time, and how survival can mean finding strength in unexpected places. Yet, even within its sorrow, the story also reveals how bonds of friendship and loyalty can become lifelines when love falters. The title itself, New Moon, is a fitting metaphor. The new moon marks the darkest phase of the lunar cycle, a night sky emptied of its familiar light. For Bella, this darkness reflects her own inner landscape, where the glow of love disappears, and she must learn how to live within the shadows. At the same time, the new moon carries the promise of renewal, reminding us that darkness, though complete, is not permanent. Renewal and healing are always waiting to emerge, even if slowly and with pain. Through its progression, the book examines what it means to lose someone who feels like the center of your existence. It is not simply about romance, but about the depths of despair and the resilience that slowly, quietly builds in its wake. The journey is emotional, sometimes overwhelming, yet it mirrors truths many readers understand, that love can leave scars, that emptiness can feel endless, and that strength often appears when we least expect it. New Moon is more than a continuation of Bella's story. It is a meditation on grief, recovery, and the choices that shape identity. The novel draws readers into the painful silence of separation, then challenges them to consider the meaning of healing, the power of friendship, and the weight of decisions that can alter life forever. It is both darker and more tender than its predecessor, offering a portrait of love that is not only passionate, but also fragile, vulnerable, and deeply human. Disclaimer. This summary of New Moon by Stephanie Meyer is an original work created for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for reading the novel itself. All characters, settings, and storylines are the intellectual property of Stephanie Meyer, and this work makes no claim of ownership over them. The purpose of this summary is to provide readers with a detailed, accessible exploration of the book's themes, character development, and narrative structure. While every effort has been made to remain true to the source material, this retelling is interpretive in nature, and may condense or paraphrase certain events for clarity and flow. Readers are strongly encouraged to experience the complete novel, to fully appreciate the depth, style, and artistry of the author. This summary should be viewed as a companion to the original work, not a replacement. Chapter 1: Party. Bella's 18th birthday arrives with a heaviness that overshadows the very idea of celebration. For most people, such a milestone brings excitement, a sense of stepping further into adulthood, but for her it carries a sting that cannot be softened by gifts or kind words. Each year that passes draws her farther away from Edward, not in affection but in time itself. She will age, wrinkle and fade, while he remains locked in the perfection of 17, unchanged and untouchable. That truth follows her through every moment of the day, whispering that she is on borrowed time with him, and that her humanity is the barrier she cannot cross without losing herself. The unease becomes sharper in a dream that takes hold of her sleep. She sees her grandmother, long dead, standing in the bright sunlight that Forks never offers. For a moment it feels like a sweet reunion, until she realizes that the figure is not her grandmother at all, but a reflection of herself. Old, fragile, and withered, she stands beside Edward, whose beauty and youth are untouched by years. The vision sears into her with clarity. She will continue to move forward in time, but Edward will never change. The thought of growing older while he stays eternal is unbearable. She wakes with the dream still clinging to her, as if it has etched itself into her skin. Edward's presence only magnifies the unease. He insists on acknowledging her birthday, no matter how much she protests. His family, ever gracious, plans a gathering, and Bella finds herself swept along despite her reluctance. The Cullens' home is radiant as always, filled with warmth, music, and the sense of timelessness that defines them. To step inside is to be reminded of how effortlessly they embody elegance, each movement refined, each word measured. Bella feels the contrast immediately. In her own eyes she is awkward, ordinary, a human stumbling into a space where she does not belong. Their affection is genuine, yet it only sharpens her awareness that she is breakable in a world where even laughter holds undercurrents of restraint. The evening begins with affection and small joys. Alice, brimming with enthusiasm, showers Bella with attention, determined to make the day memorable. The others present their gifts with warmth, their smiles meant to reassure her that she is part of their family. For a fleeting moment, Bella allows herself to relax, to imagine that she could belong in this circle of immortals. Yet the thought lingers in the back of her mind. She is a visitor, not a permanent member, and every gesture of kindness reminds her of what she lacks. The illusion of safety is shattered when a small accident changes everything. While unwrapping a present, the slip of paper leaves a tiny cut on her finger. The drop of blood that follows is so slight, so ordinary to her, but it carries devastating consequences in this house. The scent fills the air, striking at the very instincts the Cullens resist every day. Jasper, the one who struggles most with control, is overwhelmed in an instant. The shift from civility to danger is terrifyingly quick. His hunger overtakes him, and he lunges toward Bella with no thought but thirst. Edward reacts before anyone else can move. His love drives him to protect her, but his desperate act is violent in itself. He hurls Bella out of harm's reach, his strength so great that she crashes into a table, leaving her with a wound far worse than the cut that started it. The room fills with chaos, family members pulling Jasper back, their faces a mix of guilt and shame. What began as a celebration has descended into fear, and Bella lies bleeding, more aware than ever of how fragile her body is in a world like this. Carlyle steps forward with calm authority, guiding the scene back toward control. He tends to Bella with a steady hand, stitching her arm while his voice offers comfort. His presence provides a counterbalance to the frenzy, a reminder that self-control and compassion can coexist with hunger. For Bella, Carlyle's care is reassuring, yet the memory of Jasper's lunge and Edward's desperate protection cannot be erased so easily. The pain of the stitches is sharp, but sharper still is the realization that she is not safe, not even in the embrace of those who love her most. Edward's silence in the aftermath speaks volumes. His gaze lingers on Bella not with tenderness but with something closer to sorrow. To her it feels like distance, an unspoken frustration at her clumsiness. What she cannot see is that Edward's mind is already shifting, weighed down by the knowledge that keeping her close means placing her in constant danger. For him, the cut on her finger is not an accident to forget, but proof that their love is built on a fragile foundation, one that might collapse under the weight of reality. Bella leaves the Cullens' home stitched and sore, her birthday overshadowed by fear and confusion. The decorations, the gifts, the laughter, none of it remains in her memory as vividly as the blood, the lunge, and the heavy silence afterward. What should have been a day of joy has instead become a turning point, one that begins to unravel the fragile bond she shares with Edward. In her heart she clings to the hope that love will be enough, but the night has already shown that love, no matter how fierce, cannot erase the dangers of two worlds colliding. Chapter 2: Stitches. The aftermath of Bella's birthday gathering reveals how fragile her place in Edward's world truly is. What begins as a celebration turns into a moment that strips away the illusion of safety. A small slip of paper, a careless cut, and suddenly the dangers that Edward has tried to shield her from come alive before her eyes. For Bella, the injury is minor, but for the Cullens it is a reminder of how difficult it is to coexist with a human, even one they love. The house that had moments before been filled with warmth and laughter becomes tense and silent, every gaze fixed on her blood. That image lingers in Bella's mind, carving into her the realization that joy and peril are never far apart when she is among them. Carlyle becomes the steady anchor in the storm. With the practiced calm of a physician who has faced centuries of challenges, he tends to Bella's arm. Yet his role is far more than medical. In his presence, Bella sees what it means to live with purpose despite the hunger that defines his kind. As he cleans the wound and begins his careful work, their conversation shifts into something more meaningful. Carlyle speaks of his choices, of the belief that immortality must be lived with conviction, and that compassion is the only thing that makes eternity bearable. His words resonate deeply, offering Bella not only comfort but also a glimpse into the philosophy that holds the Cullen family together. She comes to see him not just as Edward's father, but as the quiet soul who provides the moral foundation for them all. The moment also throws Edward's turmoil into sharper relief. He remains distant, his silence a weight pressing down on Bella, though she misreads it as frustration with her clumsiness. In reality, his mind is already circling around fears that cut deeper than any wound. To love her is to risk her life, and the events of the party have confirmed what he has long dreaded. Bella, desperate for permanence and eager to stand beside him without limits, cannot yet see that his growing distance is not rejection, but the preparation for a decision that will devastate them both. For Bella, the stitches become symbolic. Carlyle closes her skin with careful hands, yet nothing can close the widening space between her and Edward. The wound becomes a metaphor for their relationship, visible healing on the surface, but a deeper fracture forming underneath. She leaves not only with an arm wrapped in bandages, but with a heart clouded by unspoken questions. Why does Edward seem so far away? Why does his gaze linger on her with something closer to sorrow than affection? The answers have not yet been spoken, but the silence carries them like a shadow waiting to fall. What gives this moment its power is the way it foreshadows the unraveling to come. The evening was meant to mark a step forward, a sign that Bella was being accepted more fully into the family she adores. Instead, it exposes how dangerous that dream truly is. The gifts, the decorations, the laughter, all of it fades in memory, replaced by the sting of an injury and the heavy quiet of Edward's presence. Bella wants to believe that love will steady them, that devotion will prove stronger than fear, but the wound reminds her that some divides cannot be bridged by affection alone. In the quiet that follows, the scene transforms from an accident into a turning point. Bella clings harder to Edward, desperate to hold on to the love that defines her world, while he pulls back, already imagining how he might protect her in ways she does not want to accept. The stitches close, the bleeding stops, but the memory of that night becomes something that neither of them can escape. What remains is the certainty that their relationship has shifted, that safety can never truly exist between mortality and eternity, and that choices made in silence can shape the course of everything that lies ahead. Chapter 3: The End. The unease that began on Bella's birthday grows heavier, settling into her relationship with Edward like a weight neither of them can lift. What lingers most is not the injury or the stitches but the silence that follows. Edward becomes more distant, his every glance carrying a shadow of sorrow that Bella cannot interpret. For her, the closeness of their love has always felt unshakable, a force strong enough to weather anything. Yet now she begins to sense something shifting, an invisible barrier rising between them. His words are careful, his touch restrained, and though she tries to ignore the signs, her instincts tell her she is losing him piece by piece. The pattern of his behavior reflects his inner turmoil. Edward pulls away at school, speaks less often, and looks at her with an expression that resembles grief more than affection. Bella, desperate to hold on to what they share, clings harder, afraid that any distance will become permanent. The love that once felt limitless now carries an undercurrent of tension. Every conversation seems to teeter on the edge of something unspoken, and though Bella senses a storm building, she convinces herself that love alone will hold them together. Edward, however, is already preparing for what he sees as the only choice. The incident with Jasper confirmed his deepest fear. Bella's presence in his world places her life at risk every moment. To stay with her is to gamble with her safety, and the thought of losing her to a danger he cannot control is unbearable. He loves her with a depth that consumes him, but that very love convinces him that leaving is the greatest act of protection he can offer. For Edward, every smile she gives him feels like a reminder of what he might destroy, and every moment he spends by her side strengthens his resolve to go. When the conversation finally comes, it strikes Bella with the force of a blow. Edward tells her that he and his family are leaving Forks, that they must disappear as they always have before. His words are calm, almost cold, and he insists that it is as though she means nothing to him, that he no longer wants her in his life. For Bella, the ground seems to vanish beneath her. She had feared his distance, but never imagined he would sever their bond so completely. The declaration shatters her world, pulling the air from her lungs and leaving her with nothing but disbelief and pain. What makes the moment devastating is Edward's refusal to let her see the truth behind his words. He believes that only by being cruel, only by convincing her that their love was not as deep as she thought, can he make her let go. Bella, however, knows the truth of what they have shared, and his denial only deepens her wound. To lose him would be agony enough, but to be told that it was meaningless feels like erasure of everything that had defined her life since he entered it. In the forest where he leaves her, Bella's devastation takes shape in silence. She stands stunned, unable to move, unable to breathe, as the realization sets in that he is gone. The woods around her grow darker, mirroring the emptiness that opens inside her. The strength and certainty she once drew from his presence vanish, replaced by an unbearable stillness. The girl who once found meaning in every glance, every word, is left alone with nothing but the echo of what has been taken from her. The title, The End, captures the finality Bella feels in this moment. It is not just the end of a relationship, but the end of the life she thought she was building. She cannot imagine a future without Edward, cannot picture days or nights that do not revolve around his existence. His departure is not a simple heartbreak, but a collapse of the foundation on which she has built her sense of self. What remains is emptiness, a hollow space where love once thrived, and the overwhelming question of how to go on when the center of her world has vanished. The break is not simply a turning point, it is the catalyst for everything that follows. Bella's grief, her numbness, and the desperate search for meaning in the absence of Edward all stem from this moment. Love, which once gave her strength, now becomes the source of her deepest wound. With his leaving, she is forced into a darkness she has never known before, a darkness that will shape every choice she makes in the months ahead. Chapter 4: Waking Up. The silence left in Edward's absence consumes Bella with a depth she has never known. What follows his departure is not simply heartbreak, but a hollowing of her very sense of self. She moves through the days unable to connect with her surroundings, as if her body remains while her spirit has been stripped away. The forest where she last saw him lingers in her memory, like a wound that never closes, each tree and shadow etched into her mind as a place of abandonment. In losing Edward, she feels she has lost not only the love of her life, but also the meaning that once carried her forward. Life at home shifts, but Bella experiences it only distantly. Charlie watches his daughter with a growing helplessness, his concern mounting as he sees her retreat into silence. She does not scream or lash out, but the quiet is heavier than any outburst could be. Meals pass without conversation, school becomes a blur, and the seasons begin to change unnoticed. Maya captures this passage of time in a haunting way. Pages slip by marked only by the names of months, a visual reflection of how Bella drifts through her life without truly living it. Each month becomes another reminder of how long she has endured without Edward, yet also of how little she is truly healed. The numbness defines her existence. Where once there had been passion and laughter, there is now only routine and detachment. Friends at school reach out with kindness, but Bella cannot meet them halfway. She keeps her head down, avoids conversations, and withdraws into a silence that alienates her from the world around her. Even her closest companions begin to fade into the background, unable to bridge the gap between her and the emptiness she carries. The life she once lived feels like a distant memory, overshadowed by the absence of the one who had become her center. For Charlie, watching his daughter fade into this state becomes unbearable. He urges her to reconnect, to spend time with friends, to do anything that might bring back the spark she has lost. His concern is laced with frustration, but beneath it is the deep worry of a father who feels powerless. Bella, though aware of his distress, cannot break free of the weight that holds her. To her, joy feels impossible, as if it belongs to another life entirely. The world moves on, but she remains trapped in the moment Edward left her, unable to imagine a future without him. The title, Waking Up, carries an irony that cuts deeply. On the surface it suggests renewal, the stirring from sleep into awareness, but for Bella it signifies the painful reality of waking each morning to find herself still without him. Sleep offers no escape. Her dreams are haunted by the absence of Edward, and waking is worse, a reminder that he is gone not only in the night but in the daylight too. Each morning is another confrontation with emptiness, another step into a day that feels drained of meaning. This chapter sets the tone for the months of grief that follow, showing how absence can be as powerful as presence. Edward's decision was made to protect her, but for Bella it becomes a slow erosion of self. Love had given her strength, but its loss leaves her fractured, her world muted and colorless. The passage of time is no longer measured by events or joys but by survival, one day flowing into the next without distinction. The act of simply existing becomes her reality, and the life she once knew becomes a memory too painful to revisit. The imagery of months slipping by without detail captures grief in a way words alone cannot. It is not only Bella's story, but a reflection of what it means to lose someone so completely that life itself becomes unrecognizable. In showing this void, the narrative lays the foundation for the transformation to come. Before healing, before renewal, there must first be the stillness of despair, and waking up reveals that stillness in all its haunting silence. Chapter 5: Cheetah. As the haze of grief continues to shape Bella's life, she begins to search for something, anything that might stir a response within her. Her days have been dulled into sameness, months sliding by without memory, and she feels disconnected not only from others but from herself. The void Edward left is so absolute that she cannot imagine filling it, yet the silence has become unbearable. What emerges in this space is not healing but a reckless curiosity, an urge to find the sharp edge of fear as a way to feel alive again. The moment this change occurs comes unexpectedly. When confronted with a small act of danger, Bella hears his voice. It is not Edward in flesh and presence, but his voice in her mind, clear and commanding, warning her against recklessness. The shock of hearing him is electrifying. It breaks through the numbness, and jolts her with the illusion that he is still with her. For Bella, this discovery becomes more than a comfort, it becomes a lure. She realizes that risking herself brings him back in some way, that danger acts as a bridge across the emptiness. What begins as an accident evolves into a deliberate temptation, a means of cheating the absence that has consumed her. The pursuit of these moments does not come without conflict. Bella knows the risks, knows that her father worries and that her friends would never understand. Yet the logic of caution loses its grip when weighed against the possibility of hearing Edward again. Every brush with fear is not about adrenaline but about connection, however fragile. She does not chase thrill for its own sake, she chases the echo of love. In this way, her actions reveal how grief can distort desire, turning even recklessness into a form of longing. Her choices, however, ripple outward. Charlie sees her changes and becomes more anxious, recognizing that his daughter is not simply sad but drawn into something deeper, something troubling. His frustration grows, but Bella cannot explain the truth to him. To confess that she hears Edward's voice would sound like madness, and so she keeps her secret, letting the distance between them widen. Her grief, once passive, has now transformed into dangerous behavior that isolates her even further from those who care about her. The title Cheater captures the essence of this shift. Bella is not moving forward, nor is she healing in any meaningful way. Instead, she is skirting around the pain, finding loopholes to cheat her way back into Edward's presence, even if only in her imagination. The danger does not erase her suffering but temporarily masks it, convincing her that she can still cling to him if she is willing to risk herself. Each reckless act becomes less about survival and more about preservation of love, a way of holding on to something that has already slipped beyond her reach. In this stage of her journey, Bella is not yet ready to accept absence as permanent. Her mind resists the finality of loss, and her heart refuses to stop reaching for Edward. The voice she hears becomes proof to her that their bond endures, even if in a fractured form. Yet beneath the fragile comfort lies a growing truth. Living this way will demand more and more from her, pulling her further into recklessness that could end in consequences she cannot anticipate. What makes this period so haunting is the honesty with which it reflects grief's complexity. To outsiders, Bella's actions may look foolish or reckless, but within the frame of her love and loss, they make sense. She is not chasing danger for thrill, but chasing connection in the only way she knows how. Her attempts to cheat absence are a portrait of desperation, a reminder of how far a person can go to avoid the silence that follows when someone they love disappears. Chapter 6 Friends. The spiral of isolation and risk begins to shift when Bella slowly reconnects with the ordinary world around her, though it is not through healing in the traditional sense. What draws her out is not a sudden return of joy, but the necessity of engaging with people who remind her that life continues even when her heart feels frozen. School and her small circle of acquaintances begin to reclaim her attention, yet it is through Jacob Black that the first true thread of connection emerges. His presence is easy, uncomplicated, and warm in a way that contrasts sharply with the cold, haunted silence she has lived in since Edward's departure. Jacob's energy is different from what Bella has known. Where Edward's presence carried intensity and weight, Jacob offers lightness. His humor, his openness, and his willingness to meet her in whatever state she is in provide her with something she desperately needs, a sense of being seen without judgment. Spending time with him does not erase the grief, but it allows her to breathe in a way she has not since her loss. Each shared moment with Jacob is less about romance, and more about rediscovering the ability to exist in the company of another person. The idea of friendship, simple as it seems, becomes a lifeline. Jacob draws Bella into the ordinary rhythms of life, conversations that do not circle around loss, activities that do not leave her steeped in silence. It is not that she forgets Edward when she is with Jacob, she never does. Instead, Jacob's companionship helps soften the sharpest edges of the pain, offering her small reprieves from the emptiness that has defined her. His loyalty and warmth begin to rebuild something within her that grief had stripped away, the recognition that bonds outside of love can also sustain. What makes this stage significant is the way it contrasts two forms of survival. Bella's earlier recklessness with danger was a desperate attempt to conjure Edward's voice, to cling to his presence no matter the cost. Jacob's friendship, however, begins to offer her another path, one rooted not in illusion but in genuine connection. She is not cheating her grief here, as she did with risk-taking, but allowing herself to find steadiness in someone who is real, present, and wholly human. This does not resolve her longing for Edward, but it complicates it, proving that love is not the only force that can anchor her in the world. Charlie notices the difference almost immediately. He sees his daughter laugh again, however briefly, and move through her days with a little more energy. His relief is palpable, though he cannot know the depth of what Bella carries. For him, Jacob represents a chance for Bella to live again, to remember that she is young and deserving of joy. His support for their growing friendship underscores the parental hope that a simple human bond might succeed where all else has failed. The title Friends is understated but powerful. It reminds the reader that healing often begins not with sweeping gestures or grand romance, but with something as simple as companionship. In the context of Bella's grief, friendship becomes an act of survival. Jacob does not erase her loss, but he reminds her of her humanity, of the warmth and steadiness that come from being cared for without expectation. At this stage, Bella is not free of her pain, nor is she ready to move on in the way others might wish for her. Yet by opening herself to friendship, she begins to take a tentative step toward resilience. The bond with Jacob is the first sign that she can still form connections, still laugh, still participate in the world without losing the memory of the love that defines her. It is a delicate balance, but one that offers her the possibility of strength that comes not from clinging to what is gone, but from building on what remains. Chapter 7: Repetition. The sense of rhythm returns to Bella's life, though it is not the rhythm of joy or renewal but a pattern of survival. After Edward's departure, time itself had collapsed into emptiness, months slipping by without distinction, but now a new cycle begins to form. Her days are shaped by familiar routines that bring her both comfort and unease. On the surface it looks like progress. She attends school, spends time with Jacob and engages with the world again, but beneath it all her choices are still bound to the ache of absence. Her friendship with Jacob becomes the center of this new cycle. Their time together is filled with ordinary activities, fixing things, laughing over small jokes, riding together, and Bella finds in him a steady warmth that contrasts with the cold silence Edward left behind. Jacob becomes a constant presence, someone who never questions her sadness but also never lets it define her entirely. In his company, she begins to relearn what it means to exist in the present moment, even if her heart remains tethered to the past. Yet what makes these moments poignant is the way she clings to them, not because she is moving on, but because she cannot bear the alternative of drifting back into emptiness. Alongside Jacob's companionship grows another pattern, one rooted in danger. Bella has discovered that recklessness calls forth Edward's voice, that the edge between safety and harm is where she feels closest to him. This realization becomes a temptation she cannot resist. Motorcycles, speed and risk all become part of her repeated attempts to cheat the silence. Each act is not about thrill-seeking but about preservation, as though risking her life is the only way to keep her love alive. What might appear as a reckless habit is, for Bella, a ritual of longing. The interplay between these two patterns, Jacob's friendship and Bella's recklessness, defines this stage of her journey. One path offers her grounding in the real, in laughter and companionship that is tangible, while the other leads her deeper into illusion, tethered to a voice that is only a memory. Bella is caught between them, unable to let go of Edward, but unwilling to surrender entirely to despair. Instead, she repeats her actions, caught in a cycle that both sustains and endangers her. Charlie observes these changes with cautious relief. He sees his daughter smiling again, engaging with life in ways he had feared she had lost, but he does not see the full truth. What looks like healing is complicated by the undercurrent of self-destruction. Bella hides her dangerous choices, unwilling to explain that her actions are not about rebellion but about longing. To Charlie, Jacob seems like the antidote to her grief, a friend who brings her back to herself, but Bella knows that her heart still belongs to the absence she cannot abandon. The title Repetition carries more weight than simple habit. It speaks to the way grief reshapes life into cycles of behavior, how patterns form not because they bring fulfillment but because they create a rhythm that dulls the pain. Bella repeats her reckless acts to hear Edward's voice, repeats her hours with Jacob to feel human again, and repeats the motions of everyday life to convince others she is coping. Each repetition is a survival strategy, fragile but necessary, even if it does not lead to resolution. What gives this stage its depth is the way it captures the truth of living with loss. Healing is rarely linear, it circles back on itself, weaving between moments of connection and moments of collapse. Bella embodies this contradiction, finding herself both grounded and lost, both comforted and endangered. The cycle she builds is not an end but a fragile equilibrium, one that will be tested as the story continues. For now, repetition becomes her way of keeping life moving forward, even as her heart remains frozen in the past. Chapter 8: Adrenaline. The search for Edward's presence through danger intensifies, shaping Bella's choices with a new clarity. If she cannot have him in reality, she will find him in the space between fear and survival. What began as a shocking discovery, that his voice emerges in moments of recklessness, becomes an obsession, a deliberate pursuit of circumstances that threaten her safety. She convinces herself that the risk is worth it, that hearing him again, even as an echo in her mind, is the closest she can come to closing the unbearable gap he left behind. This need leads her deeper into Jacob's world. The motorcycles they rebuild together become the perfect vessel for her longing. On the surface, the project seems like a harmless pastime, a distraction shared with a friend who genuinely enjoys her company. But for Bella, the motorcycles are more than machines. They are a promise of danger, a key to unlocking Edward's voice once more. Each moment in the garage with Jacob brings her closer to that possibility, though Jacob interprets their work together as a sign of growing closeness. He throws himself into the project with the enthusiasm of someone who wants to impress and protect, while Bella, though grateful for his loyalty, views it primarily as a means to reconnect with the one she has lost. The first time she feels the rush of speed, the voice she longs for returns sharp and commanding, warning her to stop. The sound of Edward in her mind is intoxicating. The world blurs around her, fear floods her veins, but all she can focus on is that she has found a way to bring him back. The danger does not terrify her. It comforts her because it proves their connection still exists in some form. What frightens others thrills her not because of the risk itself, but because it offers her the illusion of closeness to the love she cannot release. Jacob, oblivious to the full truth, revels in their time together. He sees Bella's laughter returning, her voice lighter, her presence more alive than it has been in months. To him, the motorcycles are an adventure, a way of coaxing her out of her grief, of showing her that she can still feel joy. His devotion to her is unspoken but clear in every gesture, every smile, every hour he spends by her side. Yet Jacob does not realize that her joy is rooted not in their shared work, but in the ghost she hears each time she pushes herself closer to the edge of danger. The contrast between Jacob's intentions and Bella's hidden motivations deepens the emotional complexity of this stage. To Jacob, he is helping a friend rebuild her life. To Bella, he is unwittingly helping her sustain her obsession with Edward. The motorcycles embody this divide. For Jacob they are about freedom, laughter, and friendship, but for Bella they are about desperation, risk, and illusion. Their bond grows stronger in the process, yet it is built on different truths, leaving a tension that will only grow as Jacob's feelings deepen and Bella's reliance on danger intensifies. The pull of adrenaline becomes symbolic of grief itself. For Bella, it is not about chasing excitement but about chasing presence. Each time she risks herself, she cheats the silence, slipping into a world where Edward has not abandoned her. The thrill of the moment is less about the speed of the motorcycle or the rush of fear, and more about the comfort of hearing his voice again. In this way, adrenaline becomes her drug, a temporary fix that soothes her longing while trapping her in a cycle she cannot break. What makes this stage so haunting is the way it reflects the paradox of grief. The very things that harm her are the things that keep her going. Bella knows that risking her life is reckless, that her father would be horrified and her friends appalled, but the pain of silence is worse. To exist without Edward feels like no existence at all, and so she chooses danger as her way of staying tethered to him. In doing so, she reveals how love and loss can distort judgment, turning even self-destructive behavior into acts of devotion. Jacob's presence softens the sharpest edges of this recklessness, but it cannot erase it. His loyalty and warmth give Bella something real to hold on to, yet she continues to slip back into her pursuit of Edward's voice whenever the silence grows too heavy. Jacob may be helping her live again, but in her heart she remains bound to the one who left. The chapter becomes a portrait of two competing forces, the grounding comfort of friendship and the intoxicating pull of obsession. The title Adrenaline captures both the literal and emotional essence of this stage. It is the physical rush Bella feels as she pushes herself into danger, but it is also the emotional rush of briefly closing the gap between herself and Edward. The word speaks to survival, to the body's instinctive reaction to fear, yet for Bella it is not instinct but intention. She seeks out adrenaline not to save herself, but to conjure what she has lost, using fear as a conduit for love. In this way, the chapter illustrates the fragile balance of her life. On the surface, she appears to be living again, spending time with friends, smiling and engaging with the world. Beneath that surface, however, lies a dangerous truth. Her survival is tied to risk, her sense of connection bound to the echo of a voice that no longer belongs to her. The adrenaline keeps her moving forward, but it also keeps her trapped, unable to let go, unable to truly heal. Chapter 9: Third Wheel. The fragile rhythm Bella has found through Jacob's friendship begins to change once others are introduced into the orbit of her recovery. Until now, she has existed within a bubble defined by two forces: the grounding presence of Jacob and the intoxicating danger that conjures Edward's voice. Together, these elements have allowed her to survive the weight of grief, even if her survival rests on fragile foundations. Yet as the circle widens to include others, the tension in Bella's carefully constructed balance begins to show. Jacob has become her constant companion, his laughter and warmth drawing her further away from the silence that once consumed her. Their friendship grows through shared time, hours spent working on motorcycles or lingering in conversations that seem to stretch effortlessly. For Jacob, these moments are more than friendship. His feelings for Bella deepen, and though he rarely speaks them aloud, they are visible in his eagerness, in the way his face lights up when she arrives, and in his devotion to her happiness. To Bella, his companionship is vital, yet it remains firmly within the realm of friendship. Her heart is still tethered to Edward, and she cannot imagine opening herself to anyone else. When she joins Jacob and his group of friends on an outing, the shift becomes clear. Surrounded by others, Bella feels both included and apart. The camaraderie of the group is genuine, yet she senses the invisible wall that separates her from their easy cheerfulness. Jacob's friends joke, tease and flirt, embodying a world of teenage normalcy that Bella no longer feels she belongs to. Her grief has aged her in ways they cannot understand, and their carefree energy highlights how much she has lost. Even so, she tries to fit into the dynamic, leaning on Jacob's presence as her anchor. The term third wheel reflects Bella's awareness of her place in this new arrangement. She sees how Jacob is drawn to her, how his devotion separates him from the others, and how she herself does not fully return what he gives. The imbalance becomes uncomfortable, not because she does not care for Jacob, but because she knows her feelings will never match the depth of his. While he provides her with light and warmth, her heart still belongs to a love she cannot let go. This realization complicates their friendship, casting shadows over moments that should be simple. Bella's inability to reciprocate Jacob's growing affection is not rooted in indifference, but in the permanence of her attachment to Edward. No amount of laughter or closeness can replace what she has lost, and every attempt to imagine otherwise feels like betrayal. Her grief remains a constant companion, and while Jacob eases her pain, he cannot erase it. For Jacob, this truth is both frustrating and heartbreaking, though he does not yet fully confront it. Instead, he continues to offer Bella his loyalty, hoping that time will soften her devotion to Edward. The outing also underscores the contrast between Bella's internal world and the external one she inhabits. To her peers, she appears as a girl spending time with friends, perhaps even flirting at the edges of something new. Internally, however, she is still caught between loss and longing, unable to step fully into the present. The disconnect highlights how grief isolates, how it creates an invisible barrier that others cannot see, even as they stand beside her. Jacob, for all his closeness, remains the only one who can bridge that divide, though even he cannot fully reach the depths of her attachment to Edward. The title Third Wheel resonates on multiple levels. It reflects Bella's position within Jacob's group of friends, where she feels like an outsider to their ease and cheer. It also reflects her role in her friendship with Jacob, where her inability to return his feelings creates an imbalance. More deeply, it mirrors her own sense of self. She feels like an extra part in her own life, a bystander rather than a participant, weighed down by a love that exists only in memory. This stage of Bella's journey is not about rejection or acceptance but about recognition. She begins to see that her bond with Jacob, though essential, is complicated by the unspoken truth of his affection and her inability to let go of Edward. Their friendship remains vital, yet it is fragile, shaped by contradictions neither of them can resolve. The warmth Jacob provides is real, but so is the emptiness Edward left behind. Bella lives in the tension between these two truths, unable to give herself fully to either path. What emerges here is the beginning of a conflict that will only grow stronger as the story continues. Jacob's loyalty will demand more, Bella's grief will demand less, and the imbalance between them will deepen. For now, she holds on to his friendship as her lifeline, even as she senses the undercurrents of something she cannot reciprocate. The repetition of her days, once soothing, now becomes strained, caught between comfort and complication. It is within this space that Bella begins to realize that healing is never simple, and that even friendship can carry its own form of heartbreak. Chapter 10: The Meadow. The pursuit of Edward's voice reaches a peak when Bella makes the reckless decision to return to the meadow that once symbolized the heart of their love. This place carries enormous weight in her memory. It is where their connection felt most alive, where sunlight broke through the trees and illuminated Edward's skin, where devotion and danger coexisted in a single unforgettable moment. For Bella, the meadow is not simply a location in the forest. It is a sacred space, the embodiment of everything she has lost. To seek it again is to court both hope and devastation, to test whether any remnant of him remains in the places they once shared. The journey into the forest is charged with determination. Bella convinces herself that if she can return to the meadow, she will find something of Edward there, even if it is only his echo in her mind. Her desperation to feel close to him fuels every step, and she clings to the idea that the meadow will answer her longing. Yet beneath that determination lies fear that the space will be empty, that it will confirm his absence more cruelly than words ever could. To risk that truth is painful, but to stay away is unbearable. When she arrives, the meadow does not offer the comfort she craves. Instead of light and memory, she is confronted with emptiness. The grass is the same, the trees are unchanged, but the space feels desolate, stripped of the magic that once made it sacred. Edward is not there, not in body, not in presence, not even in voice. The silence that fills the meadow cuts deeper than any wound, confirming that the place she cherished holds nothing but absence now. The weight of this realization presses on Bella, as if even the forest itself is reminding her of what she has lost. Yet the meadow does not remain empty for long. In a chilling twist, she finds herself face to face not with Edward but with Laurent, one of the nomadic vampires she met months earlier. His presence transforms the meadow from a shrine of memory into a place of mortal danger. Laurent is no longer the uneasy guest he once was. He is a predator, drawn by thirst and emboldened by the Cullen's absence. Bella realizes quickly that she is not in a place of nostalgia but in the path of death. The meadow becomes not a refuge but a trap. Laurent's words confirm what Edward feared. Her connection to his world places her in constant peril. He explains that Victoria, the vengeful mate of James, still hunts her, determined to take her life as retribution for Edward's killing of her partner. Laurent himself, though feigning civility, makes clear his own hunger. In his eyes, Bella is prey, and without Edward or the Cullens she has no protection. The moment crystallizes the danger Edward tried to prevent. By loving him, she has placed herself squarely in the crosshairs of vengeance. What saves her is not Edward, but the sudden intervention of something new. Wolves, massive and terrifying, emerge from the forest, chasing Laurent away with a ferocity that defies belief. To Bella, the sight is surreal, almost mythic. Beasts larger than she imagined possible, moving with strength and coordination that suggest they are no ordinary animals. The wolf's presence adds a new layer of mystery to her world, one she does not yet understand but that will soon transform the course of her life. The meadow, once a symbol of love, becomes the site of revelation, danger, and salvation. The symbolism of this moment is profound. The meadow no longer belongs to Edward and Bella, it has been tainted by absence and danger. Where once it held the purity of first love, it now carries the memory of threat and the knowledge that her ties to Edward's world invite enemies she cannot face alone. The voice she longed to hear never came, and instead she is reminded that love, when intertwined with immortality, carries consequences that extend far beyond heartbreak. The title, The Meadow, resonates because it represents the collision of past and present. For Bella, it was the place of her happiest memories, but returning there only underscores the truth: Edward is gone, and his absence has left her vulnerable to forces she cannot comprehend. What was once sacred becomes scarred, a reminder that even the most cherished places cannot shield her from reality. This stage of Bella's journey reveals the limits of her recklessness. Seeking Edward through adrenaline and memory has led her not to his voice but to mortal danger. Yet it also opens the door to a new mystery: the wolves who saved her, creatures that embody a strength and presence she cannot explain. Their sudden appearance foreshadows a shift in Bella's world, one that will draw her deeper into the supernatural, even as she continues to cling to the love that defined her. The meadow then becomes a turning point. It confirms the permanence of Edward's absence, exposes the danger of Victoria's revenge, and introduces the wolves as protectors whose true nature remains hidden. Bella leaves not with the comfort she sought, but with a deeper understanding of the peril she faces, and the unsettling truth that her connection to Edward's world has consequences that linger even after his departure. Chapter 11: Cult. The encounter in the meadow leaves Bella shaken, not only because she has narrowly escaped death, but because the rescue itself raises more questions than it answers. The wolves that drove Laurent away are unlike anything she has ever seen before. Their sheer size, their coordination, and the deliberate way they acted suggest intelligence beyond ordinary animals. The memory of their massive forms prowls her thoughts, intertwining with the fear Laurent's words have left behind. Victoria is still hunting her, and Edward's absence has left her exposed to dangers she cannot comprehend. The wolves are a mystery, and in Forks, mysteries never remain separate from the supernatural. As Bella tries to make sense of what she witnessed, Jacob becomes an increasingly central figure in her search for clarity. He has become her anchor, the one person she trusts to give her truth when everything else feels uncertain. Yet even Jacob begins to appear more elusive. Rumors swirl among his peers, whispers about strange behavior and whispered stories that Bella cannot easily ignore. The people of the Quileute tribe speak of legends, tales passed down through generations, and though Jacob laughs off her questions at first, there is an edge to his avoidance that deepens her curiosity. The friendship that once felt simple now carries layers of secrecy, and Bella cannot help but wonder what he is keeping from her. The word cult begins to shape itself in her mind, not because she believes Jacob is part of something sinister, but because the behavior of his friends carries the weight of ritual. Sam Yulee, the quiet but commanding presence among them, leads a group of young men who seem bound together by something unspoken. Their unity feels absolute, their loyalty to one another unquestionable, and their silence toward outsiders unbreakable. Bella watches this group from a distance, noting their physical transformations, their sudden growth, their strength, their tendency to disappear for long stretches, and she senses that Jacob is on the verge of joining them. Her fear sharpens when Jacob begins to withdraw. The boy who had been her constant companion, who filled her days with warmth and laughter, suddenly becomes distant, avoiding her questions and breaking promises without explanation. His absence feels eerily familiar, echoing Edward's departure and reopening wounds that had barely begun to close. Bella feels the old silence return, and with it the weight of abandonment. She cannot understand why Jacob, who had promised her steadfast friendship, now acts as though he is bound by something larger than himself. The sense of secrecy in La Push fuels Bella's determination. She clings to every hint, every fragment of rumor, desperate to piece together the truth. Her mind turns again to the supernatural, the only explanation that makes sense in a world where vampires exist and wolves the size of horses appear in meadows. The more she observes, the more convinced she becomes that Jacob and the boys who follow Sam are tied to the wolves that saved her. The thought terrifies her, not because she fears Jacob himself, but because she fears losing him to forces she cannot control. The irony of her situation is striking. Edward left to protect her from the dangers of his world, yet danger has found her again, this time woven into the very fabric of her closest human friendship. The supernatural is not something she can escape, no matter how she tries. Where Edward's world was defined by restraint, beauty, and secrecy, Jacob seems to be grounded in raw strength, primal energy, and ancient tradition. Bella finds herself caught between two worlds she barely understands, each demanding sacrifices she is not prepared to make. The title Cult reflects Bella's perspective more than reality. From her view, the group surrounding Sam Muley resembles a brotherhood bound by rules and mysteries that exclude her. They operate with a unity that feels almost religious in its intensity, and she cannot yet see the full truth of what they are. Her suspicion is not rooted in distrust of Jacob, but in fear of losing him to something she cannot share. Just as she once feared growing older while Edward remained unchanging, she now fears being left behind while Jacob transforms into someone she no longer recognizes. This stage of the story captures the painful uncertainty of transition. Bella is desperate to hold on to the stability she has found in Jacob, but she feels it slipping away. She cannot shake the sense that the supernatural is encroaching on her life once again, reshaping her reality whether she welcomes it or not. The wolves, the rumors, and Jacob's withdrawal all point to a new truth waiting to be revealed, one that will redefine her understanding of loyalty, identity, and danger. In her search for answers, Bella reveals both her resilience and her vulnerability. She refuses to accept silence as an answer, pushing against the walls Jacob builds around himself, even as it reopens the wounds Edward left behind. What she does not yet realize is that her determination will soon uncover not just the mystery of the wolves, but the deeper meaning of Jacob's place in her life. Cult becomes the bridge between the comfort of friendship and the revelation of something far greater, reminding Bella that love and loss are never static, and that the truth often demands sacrifices of its own. Chapter 12: Intruder. The fragile balance Bella has been trying to hold together shatters once more when danger intrudes directly into her world. Until now, her sense of threat has hovered at the edges of her life, whispered through Laurent's warnings or glimpsed in the mysterious wolves that seem to stalk the forests. But in this moment, the menace becomes personal, immediate, and inescapable. Forks, which once felt like a safe and sleepy town, is pierced by the reminder that the supernatural is not just a secret she brushes against but a force determined to find her. The threat takes form in Victoria's growing presence. Though Bella has not yet seen her directly, the signs are undeniable: reports of strange sightings, the unease that spreads through the community, and the knowledge that Laurent's words were not idle. Victoria has not forgotten the loss of her mate, nor has she forgiven the Cullens for his death. Without Edward's protection, Bella is exposed, the clear target of a vengeance that will not rest until it is satisfied. Every shadow, every rustle of the forest carries the possibility that Victoria is drawing nearer. The sense of being hunted settles into Bella's bones, adding another layer to the grief she already bears. At the same time, the mystery of Jacob and his growing connection to Sam Muley's group intensifies. Bella begins to notice patterns she cannot ignore: Jacob's sudden absences, his tiredness, and the way his loyalty to her seems to pull against an invisible bond that ties him to the others. His transformation is subtle but undeniable, and for Bella it feels like abandonment repeating itself. Just as Edward drifted from her with unspoken fears and hidden decisions, Jacob begins to distance himself without offering an explanation. The boy who had once been her lifeline now becomes an enigma, and the loss of his steady presence cuts deep. This withdrawal coincides with the increased sense of intrusion in her life. Bella feels surrounded on all sides, by grief that still clings to her every thought, by the danger of Victoria's vengeance, and by the secrecy surrounding Jacob and his friends. She is left with little control over her own circumstances, dependent on fragments of truth and her own intuition to piece together what is happening. The wolves she saw in the meadow return to her thoughts, and she cannot help but connect them to the group of boys in La Push, whose bodies and behaviors shift with startling rapidity. Yet until someone speaks the truth, she is left only with suspicions, and the silence frustrates her as much as it frightens her. The title Intruder carries multiple meanings here. On the surface, it points to the literal intrusion of Victoria into Bella's world, the predator who stalks her with a hunger sharpened by vengeance. Yet it also captures the way Bella experiences intrusion in her personal life, her grief invaded by new fears, her friendship with Jacob intruded upon by secrets he will not share, and her fragile sense of normalcy pierced by the supernatural forces that refuse to let her go. Her life is no longer her own, shaped instead by dangers and mysteries she cannot control. What makes this stage of the story powerful is the way it layers Bella's vulnerabilities. She is not only haunted by absence, but also forced to confront the presence of new threats that make her isolation more dangerous. Edward's departure was meant to protect her, yet it has left her more exposed than ever, caught between vengeful enemies and allies who will not tell her the truth. Her longing for safety, for belonging, feels increasingly impossible, as if every path she takes leads deeper into peril. The sense of intrusion also highlights Bella's resilience. Though she is terrified, she refuses to retreat into silence. She seeks answers, pushes against the walls of secrecy, and continues to fight for connection even when it means risking disappointment. Her determination shows that grief has not destroyed her completely, it has instead hardened her resolve to survive, to seek the truth, and to hold on to the bonds that remain. This moment marks a transition from grief into confrontation. The threats around Bella are no longer distant or hypothetical, they are real, immediate, and closing in. The safety she once found in the illusion of ordinary life is stripped away, replaced by the knowledge that she is at the center of conflicts that extend far beyond her. In facing the intruder, both literal and symbolic, she steps into a new stage of her journey, one defined not only by loss, but by the recognition that survival will demand strength she has not yet discovered within herself. Chapter 13 Killer. The shadow of danger that has been stalking Bella finally sharpens into form. What she once imagined as scattered threats and whispered mysteries now stands before her with terrifying clarity. Victoria's hunt is real, relentless, and closing in. The knowledge that a powerful vampire has marked her as prey becomes impossible to ignore, and Bella's world, already shaken by grief and loss, is now saturated with the awareness that death could come for her at any moment. The forest around Forks, which once offered quiet and solace, transforms into a space of menace, its silence broken by the knowledge that something is out there watching and waiting. The wolves, once glimpsed only as massive silhouettes moving at the edges of her vision, emerge as undeniable figures in this struggle. Rumors in La Push confirm what Bella has already begun to suspect. The young men surrounding Sam Yulee are not simply a group of friends bound by secrecy, but something much larger. Their bodies have changed, their behavior has become more guarded, and their loyalty to one another is absolute. When Bella learns the truth, that they are protectors bound by their heritage to transform into wolves, she realizes that the strange sightings in the forest, the massive beasts that saved her from Laurent, and Jacob's sudden distance are all part of the same story. Jacob's transformation strikes her most deeply. The boy who had once been her constant source of warmth is now altered, his body stronger, his demeanor more serious, and his role within the pack clear. Bella's grief over losing Edward resurfaces here in a new form, because she feels as though she is losing Jacob too. His laughter, once so easy and grounding, is tempered by responsibility, and his bond with the pack requires secrecy that leaves her on the outside once again. Bella fears that the supernatural has claimed another piece of her life, and she cannot escape the feeling that every connection she makes is consumed by forces beyond her control. The word killer carries layered significance. It is a reference to Victoria, whose vengeance fuels her pursuit of Bella, but it also reflects Bella's perception of the wolves. At first, she cannot reconcile the protectors she owes her life to with the idea of killers, creatures capable of destroying vampires with their sheer strength. The transformation of Jacob, gentle and loyal, into something powerful and dangerous unsettles her. The term captures her fear of what he has become, and her struggle to understand how the boy she trusted could now embody something so primal. It is only through time and experience that she begins to see the wolves not as killers but as guardians, though that recognition comes slowly and with resistance. This revelation changes the course of Bella's grief. Where before she was consumed by absence, now she is confronted with presence, threats, protectors, and choices that demand her attention. The world she once knew is gone, replaced by one where myths walk beside her, and survival depends not only on her resilience but on the loyalty of those who carry legacies older than she can fathom. Edward's absence still cuts into her every thought, but Jacob's transformation forces her to confront new questions. What does loyalty mean when it demands secrecy, and what does love mean when it collides with danger? The tension between Bella and Jacob deepens in this stage. She struggles with the knowledge that he has changed, not because he chose to, but because destiny demanded it of him. His life is no longer fully his own. It belongs to the pack, to the history of his people, and to the fight against threats like Victoria. Bella, who clings so tightly to the idea of choice and permanence, feels the sting of this reality. Her fear of losing him grows, not only to the danger he faces but to the identity he now carries, one that sets him apart from the boy she once knew. The revelation of the wolves reframes the danger surrounding Bella. She is not simply a girl caught in a supernatural feud. She is the target of a predator who will not stop until justice, in Victoria's eyes, is served. The wolves, for all their mystery, are her only shield against this threat. Yet their role as killers troubles her, reminding her that every act of protection is also an act of violence, that survival often comes at the cost of destruction. Bella stands in the middle of this conflict, torn between gratitude and fear, longing and loss, human fragility and supernatural power. The chapter represents a turning point where Bella's grief collides with external danger. No longer can she retreat into numbness or seek Edward's voice through reckless acts. The world around her demands attention, demands decisions, and demands recognition of the forces at play. Killer is not only a word that names Victoria or the wolves, but a reflection of the shifting boundaries in Bella's life. It underscores that danger is not a passing shadow, but a permanent part of the world she now inhabits. Chapter 14: Family. The truth of Jacob's transformation cannot be ignored any longer, and with it comes Bella's first real glimpse into the unity that binds the wolves together. What unsettles her most is not just Jacob's change, but the revelation that he is no longer simply her friend in the way she once knew him. He is part of something larger, a pack that functions with the cohesion of blood relatives bound not by choice but by destiny. To Bella, who has always defined family as bonds chosen through love and loyalty, the pack represents something both foreign and fascinating, a kind of family that demands obedience and unity above all else. When Bella encounters Jacob in this new light, the difference is striking. His physical transformation is obvious, his body taller and stronger, his movements sharper, but the deeper shift is in his demeanor. The carefree boy who had once filled her days with warmth now carries the weight of responsibility. He is still her Jacob, yet she can see how the pack has claimed him, shaping his identity in ways that leave less room for her. The tension between their friendship and his duty begins to strain, and Bella feels once again as though she is being left behind. Her interactions with the pack reveal how tightly their lives are intertwined. Sam Yulee commands respect, his authority extending beyond friendship into something closer to leadership by birthright. The others, Paul, Jared, Embry, and later Quill, are bound to him as brothers, their loyalty unquestionable, their unity complete. They tease, laugh, and argue as teenagers do, but beneath their banter lies a structure as unyielding as any family bloodline. Bella recognizes the strength of this bond, Yet she cannot help but feel excluded, an outsider peering into a world she cannot join. The word family resonates with complexity here. For the wolves, it signifies protection, duty, and survival. Their connection is not optional. It is woven into their very beings, forcing them to share thoughts, instincts, and responsibilities in ways humans cannot comprehend. For Bella, the word still conjures the warmth of Charlie's quiet care, her memories of Renee's scattered love, and the intimacy she once felt with Edward and the Cullens. To see Jacob so deeply absorbed into this new family highlights the divide between them. His loyalty to her is real, but it must now coexist with a loyalty that runs even deeper, one he cannot escape. The contrast between the Cullen family and the wolf pack also comes into sharper focus. Where the Cullens chose their way of life, defining family through shared values and restraint, the wolves have inherited theirs through blood and legend. Both families exist at the edges of the human world, but their bonds are formed in radically different ways, one chosen, the other inevitable. Bella, caught between them, begins to recognize how profoundly identity is shaped by the ties that bind, whether they are sought or thrust upon you. Jacob himself embodies this conflict. His affection for Bella is undeniable, yet he cannot ignore the call of the pack. When she questions him, pushes him for answers, or asks him to spend time with her apart from his duties, she sees the pain in his eyes. He wants to be the boy she leaned on, the friend who made her laugh, but the pack requires more of him than she can understand. Bella feels the sting of this shift acutely, interpreting it as a slow erosion of their closeness. She cannot yet see that Jacob is caught between two worlds, just as she once was with Edward, trying to balance the pull of destiny with the pull of love. Her sense of exclusion grows sharper in moments when she witnesses the unity of the pack. Their easy communication, their shared instincts, and their unspoken understanding remind her of what she has lost with the Cullens. Edward's family once offered her a sense of belonging that transcended her human limitations. Now Jacob's family reminds her of that same distance, a world she longs to understand but can never fully enter. The realization reinforces the theme that has followed her since the beginning. Bella is always on the outside, watching others belong to something she cannot touch. The chapter underscores how family, whether chosen or inherited, defines identity. For the wolves, it is their strength, their shield against the dangers that stalk their people. For Bella, it is both comfort and loss, a reminder of what she has gained through friendship with Jacob but also what she cannot claim for herself. The title family becomes a reflection of the tension in Bella's heart, admiration for the unity she sees, envy for the belonging it provides, and fear that it will pull Jacob further from her. What emerges most powerfully here is the realization that Jacob's world is no longer entirely his own. His devotion to Bella remains, but it must now coexist with a loyalty that runs deeper, binding him to a legacy she cannot break. For Bella, this is both heartbreaking and familiar. She recognizes in Jacob the same struggle she once saw in Edward, the tug-of-war between love and duty, freedom and obligation. In both cases, she is left grasping at bonds that cannot fully belong to her, no matter how much she longs for them. Chapter 15: Pressure. The weight of Bella's world begins to press down on her from every side, leaving her with little space to breathe. On one hand, the reality of Victoria's hunt looms closer with every passing day, the threat no longer an abstract possibility but an active danger that stalks her town. On the other, her relationship with Jacob becomes increasingly complicated as his role within the pack deepens. What once felt like a refuge now feels like another source of tension, and Bella finds herself caught between forces that demand more of her than she is able to give. Jacob remains devoted, his affection for Bella plain in every word and gesture, but his loyalty is no longer hers alone. The pack consumes much of his time and energy, and his bond with them cannot be questioned. Bella notices the ways in which Jacob has changed, his strength, his seriousness, and his growing sense of duty. He is no longer simply her friend, he has become a protector with obligations that extend beyond their shared bond. While she admires his courage, she also feels the sting of distance, realizing that the more Jacob steps into his role within the pack, the less he is fully hers. The title Pressure reflects the tightening of this situation. Bella feels the strain of Jacob's unspoken desire for their relationship to deepen, a desire she cannot reciprocate while Edward's memory still governs her heart. Jacob's frustration grows quietly, though he masks it with humor and loyalty, and Bella feels torn between gratitude for his presence and guilt for not giving him what he longs for. Their friendship is precious to her, but its imbalance weighs heavily, leaving her caught in the uncomfortable space between need and refusal. At the same time, external dangers intensify. Victoria's shadow stretches closer, her determination to avenge James unyielding. Bella cannot escape the knowledge that she is the target, the one marked for death in a feud she never asked to be part of. The pack's constant patrols, their vigilance and exhaustion, are reminders of the threat that hovers over her life. She feels both grateful for their protection and guilty for the risks they take on her behalf. The knowledge that others may be harmed or killed because of her presence creates another layer of pressure, forcing her to question her worth in a world where her very existence places those she loves in danger. Charlie, though unaware of the supernatural truths, adds to the tension with his concern. He sees the closeness between Bella and Jacob, senses the changes in his daughter, and quietly hopes that this friendship might blossom into something more. For him, Jacob represents stability, warmth, and a path back to normalcy for Bella. His subtle encouragement, though well-meaning, only heightens her inner conflict. She cannot explain to him that her heart remains bound to Edward, nor can she ignore the relief Jacob brings. The pressure mounts not just from external threats but from the expectations of those who love her. What makes this stage particularly striking is the way Bella becomes increasingly aware of her own contradictions. She depends on Jacob for companionship, laughter, and survival, yet she cannot give him the fullness of her heart. She leans on him for strength, but recoils from the idea of replacing the love she lost. She feels comfort in his presence, yet guilt for using him as a lifeline while she remains tethered to another. The more she tries to balance these truths, the more she feels the crushing weight of their irreconcilability. The supernatural world amplifies this conflict. The pack's unity is powerful, their sense of family unbreakable, but Bella knows that Jacob's role within it will only deepen with time. The more he grows into his destiny, the more he will be pulled away from her. She fears losing him as she lost Edward, not because he chooses to leave but because his world demands it of him. The knowledge that her most important bonds are fragile, constantly threatened by forces beyond her control, fills her with a pressure that borders on despair. The theme of pressure also extends to Bella's inner identity. She is caught between the human world, where she is Charlie's daughter and Jacob's friend, and the supernatural world, where she is Edward's love and Victoria's prey. Neither identity offers her peace. In one she feels fragile and inadequate, in the other she feels hunted and expendable. She longs for a place where she can belong fully, yet every path seems to demand sacrifices she is not ready to make. This stage of the story underscores the cost of living between worlds. Bella's choices are not just about love but about survival, loyalty, and identity. The pressure she feels is not simply emotional but existential, a force that presses in from every side and demands decisions she cannot yet face. What keeps her moving forward is the fragile hope that somehow she can reconcile these contradictions, that there might be a way to honor both her love for Edward and her bond with Jacob without losing herself completely. Chapter 16 Paris. The tension that has been building around Bella takes a new shape, as questions of the future begin to press more heavily on her. Up until now, her energy has been consumed by survival, surviving grief, surviving absence, and surviving the dangers that come with being marked by Victoria. Yet even in the midst of this constant struggle, another question begins to surface, one that touches on the life she will live if Edward truly never returns. The idea of what her future should be becomes unavoidable, and Bella finds herself pulled into conversations she does not want to have, with expectations she cannot meet. The title Paris refers to a classic metaphor drawn from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. In the play, Paris is the respectable suitor, the one Juliet's parents wish her to choose, a safe and acceptable match who offers security without passion. For Bella, Jacob embodies elements of this role. He is loyal, devoted, and wholly present in her life. He represents a possibility of stability, of warmth, and of a future that does not include the anguish of waiting for a love that has abandoned her. Yet in her heart she knows that Jacob, no matter how much she cares for him, cannot replace Edward. To imagine such a future feels like a betrayal, not only of her love, but of her very identity. This parallel becomes especially clear in conversations with Charlie. As Bella's father, he sees Jacob as the ideal companion for his daughter. He has watched how Jacob's presence has coaxed her back to life, how his laughter and loyalty have given her reasons to keep going. In Charlie's eyes, Jacob is a good match, someone safe and trustworthy, someone who could keep her from drifting back into the silence that consumed her after Edward's departure. His subtle encouragement that she consider Jacob is less about romance and more about a father's desperate hope that his daughter might be saved from pain. Yet for Bella, even this gentle pressure is unbearable. Her heart remains unshaken in its devotion to Edward, and any suggestion that she could simply move on feels like an erasure of everything she has endured. Jacob himself does not shy away from his feelings. His devotion to Bella is evident, even when he does not put it into words. Every action he takes, every moment he gives her, reflects his hope that she might eventually return his affection. He offers her patience and friendship, but beneath his warmth is an unspoken longing for more. Bella senses it, and though she cherishes his companionship, the knowledge that she cannot give him what he wants fills her with guilt. She depends on him to survive, yet she cannot imagine loving him in the way he longs for. In this sense, Jacob becomes both comfort and conflict, a reminder of what she has and what she cannot offer. The idea of Paris as a metaphor extends beyond Jacob. It embodies the broader tension between safety and passion, between choosing what is sensible and holding on to what is impossible. Bella is torn between the expectations of those around her and the call of her own heart. Everyone who loves her wants her to choose the path of safety, to accept a future grounded in what is available to her. But for Bella, the absence of Edward is not something that can be reasoned away. Her love is not pragmatic, it is absolute, and the thought of living without it feels like a slow death. This conflict exposes the larger theme of choice that runs through her journey. Bella must confront not only external threats, but also the question of who she wants to become. Will she remain tethered to a love that has left her, risking endless grief, or will she open herself to the possibility of a life that is more secure, even if it means forsaking the love that defines her? In refusing to see Jacob as an option, Bella reveals how deeply she clings to the idea of Edward as her only future. For her, the passion and permanence of that love outweigh any promise of safety. The chapter captures the intensity of young love and its refusal to bend to reason. Bella does not calculate her choices by what will make her life easiest or safest, she calculates them by what will make her life meaningful. Jacob may represent security, but to her Edward represents everything. The pressure from Charlie, the hope from Jacob and the metaphor of Paris all underscore the same truth: Bella cannot be persuaded to trade her devotion for practicality. Her heart remains fixed, even if that devotion threatens to break her. The weight of this stage lies in its foreshadowing. The conflict between safety and passion will not fade, it will sharpen. Jacob's presence will only grow stronger, and the expectations around Bella will continue to push her toward choices she resists. Yet her unwavering focus on Edward reveals that the course of her story is already set. For Bella, there is no compromise, no second best. There is only the hope of reclaiming the love she has lost, no matter what it costs. Chapter 17: Visitor. Just when Bella begins to settle into the fragile balance between her grief for Edward and her reliance on Jacob, her world is disrupted by a presence that reopens old wounds and tests the strength of her resolve. The comfort she has been slowly piecing together is shaken, when an unexpected visitor forces her to confront the reality of Edward's absence in a way that is more tangible than memory or dream. The arrival is not Edward himself, but a reminder of his world, carrying with it the pain of what she lost and the temptation of what she still longs for. Alice Cullen's sudden reappearance in Forks jolts Bella into a mixture of joy and anguish. Seeing Alice again is like breathing air after months underwater, yet the encounter also magnifies Edward's absence. Alice represents the family Bella once believed she belonged to, the immortals who had embraced her despite her humanity. To see her again fills Bella with relief, but it also pierces her with sorrow because Alice's presence makes Edward's departure more real. If Alice can return, why can't he? If Alice still cares, why doesn't he? The contradictions swirl through Bella's mind, and with them comes the ache of abandonment all over again. Alice's visit is not purely social. She arrives with urgency, her gift of foresight shaken by visions that reveal Bella caught in danger. To Alice, Bella's reckless behavior, the motorcycles, the adrenaline, the constant courting of risk has been glimpsed in flashes that seemed indistinguishable from suicide attempts. The misunderstanding cuts deep, because it reveals how precarious Bella's actions have appeared to others. What Bella viewed as a desperate attempt to hear Edward's voice has looked from the outside like self-destruction. The shame of this realization mixes with her longing for Edward, leaving her torn between defending her choices and acknowledging the truth of her despair. Jacob's reaction to Alice's presence adds another layer of conflict. He and Alice embody two worlds that cannot coexist peacefully: the vampires and the wolves, natural enemies bound by ancient enmity. Jacob's disdain for Alice is immediate, his protectiveness of Bella sharpening into open hostility. For him, Alice is a symbol of the pain Edward caused, a reminder of the world that abandoned Bella and left her broken. His anger is not only about loyalty but also about love. He cannot stand to see Bella pulled back into the orbit of those who hurt her. Bella, however, feels caught between them, unable to deny her joy at seeing Alice while also unwilling to wound Jacob, whose friendship has kept her alive. The presence of Alice underscores Bella's inability to let go. Even after months of silence, even after the comfort of Jacob's companionship, the return of one Cullen ignites her longing for the others. The fragile progress she has made in moving forward is immediately threatened, because Alice's very existence proves that the world she lost still exists just beyond her reach. Bella cannot stop herself from asking questions, from seeking glimpses of Edward through Alice's words and expressions. The more Alice tries to remain neutral, the more Bella searches for signs that Edward still thinks of her. The title visitor captures both the hope and the disruption that Alice brings. She is a visitor not only in Bella's home but in her heart, stirring emotions that had been buried beneath the routines of grief and survival. Alice reminds Bella of what she longs for but cannot have, reigniting desires that Jacob has worked so hard to soothe. At the same time, her presence brings danger because it signals that the boundary Edward tried to create between Bella and his world has been broken. The supernatural has entered Bella's life once again, uninvited but impossible to refuse. What gives this stage its intensity is the way it reopens the central conflict of Bella's journey, her refusal to accept a future without Edward. Jacob has offered her warmth and stability, but the moment Alice steps back into her life, Bella's heart surges with the certainty that her love is not finished. The struggle between past and present sharpens, showing that grief does not simply fade but can be reignited with a single reminder of what was lost. Alice's arrival also foreshadows the storm that is about to break. Her visions, her warnings, and her bond with Bella all set in motion the events that will carry the story to its climax. What begins as a visit quickly becomes a turning point, drawing Bella back toward Edward's world with a force she cannot resist. The visitor has not come to stay, but she has left a door open that Bella will not allow to close again. Chapter 18: The Funeral. Alice's unexpected return unsettles Bella's fragile sense of stability, but the consequences of her visit ripple far beyond Forks. What begins as a reunion between two friends quickly escalates into a misunderstanding that will set the course of everything that follows. Alice's visions, shaped by her unique ability to see possible futures, are usually reliable, but Bella's recent recklessness has distorted them. The blurred images of Bella on a cliff, surrounded by the chaos of wind and waves, looked to Alice like a suicide attempt. Believing Bella dead, Alice had rushed back both to grieve and to comfort Charlie. In doing so, she opened the door to a chain of events that neither she nor Bella could have predicted. The heart of the crisis lies in communication. Edward, living far away and consumed by grief, hears of Bella's supposed death. For him, the news is unbearable. Every choice he made in leaving Forks had been rooted in the belief that by removing himself, he was keeping her safe. To believe that she is gone, that his sacrifice meant nothing, crushes him completely. In his despair, Edward resolves to end his own existence. The irony is devastating. Bella, still alive and clinging to her love for him, becomes powerless in the face of his decision to throw away eternity. The metaphor of a funeral is fitting, though no funeral has taken place. For Edward, Bella's death is real, a loss that makes immortality unendurable. For Bella, the idea of Edward seeking his own death feels like the ultimate betrayal of her suffering. She has endured months of silence, holding on to the memory of him as her anchor, and now the thought of him ending everything because of a misunderstanding fills her with terror. The grief that once immobilized her transforms into urgent desperation, because now she is no longer fighting absence, she is fighting time. Alice becomes both ally and mirror in this moment. Her foresight, once a gift, has created the very misunderstanding that drives Edward toward destruction. Yet her loyalty to Bella is unwavering. She does not hesitate when Bella insists they must go to him, even though the path is dangerous and uncertain. Alice's presence reminds Bella that the Cullens' love for her was not erased by Edward's departure, and that family bonds, once formed, endure in ways that even separation cannot break. The chapter underscores the fragility of perception, and how easily love can be undone by miscommunication. A vision, a rumor, a single misinterpreted act, these are enough to send Edward spiraling toward despair, and Bella into a desperate attempt to save him. The image of a funeral becomes symbolic of how love and grief intertwine. Edward mourns Bella as though she were gone, while Bella mourns the possibility of losing him before she can prove to him that she is still alive. The funeral is not of a body but of hope, unless she can reach him in time. The pressure intensifies as Bella realizes the stakes of the choice before her. If Edward succeeds in provoking the Volturi, the ancient rulers of the vampire world, his death will be swift and absolute. Unlike her own reckless games with danger, his pursuit of death is deliberate, final, and irreversible. The urgency of this realization transforms Bella's grief into determination. She knows that without him, her own existence would collapse entirely, and so saving him becomes her only focus. What makes this stage of the story so powerful is the way it flips Bella's role. For months she has been the one in need of saving, rescued from grief by Jacob, shielded from predators by the wolves, held together by the fragile routines of survival. Now she is the one who must save Edward. The thought of losing him, not to distance but to death, awakens in her a strength that had been muted by despair. She becomes the driving force of the story, propelled not by recklessness but by love's urgency. The title, The Funeral, resonates because it encapsulates both the misunderstanding and the emotional truth. Edward believes he is mourning Bella, while Bella fears she will soon be mourning him. In both cases, grief is real, but it is rooted in falsehood and despair. The tragedy of the moment is that both are alive, both still love each other, and yet both are on the brink of being lost forever because of choices made in silence. This moment sets the stage for the climax of the novel. What began as grief and absence now accelerates into a race against time. Bella, who once drifted through months in silence, now feels every second with unbearable weight. The funeral becomes not an end but a catalyst, transforming sorrow into action and propelling her toward the most dangerous journey she has ever undertaken. Chapter 19 Race. The slow ache of grief that had consumed Bella for months explodes into urgency as she learns the truth of Edward's intentions. For so long her days blurred together in silence, marked only by the numb repetition of survival. Now every second matters. Edward believes she is dead, and in his despair he has resolved to end his existence. The stillness that once paralyzed Bella vanishes, replaced by frantic determination. For the first time since he left, she feels alive not through recklessness or adrenaline but through the desperate need to save him. The journey to Italy begins with Alice, whose foresight has made her both an ally and an unwitting source of the crisis. Her visions showed Edward's plan with chilling clarity. He intends to expose himself to the humans of Volterra during a festival, forcing the Volturi to intervene. In vampire lore, secrecy is absolute, and breaking it means death. Edward, knowing this, has chosen a public spectacle as his means of ending everything. For Bella, this knowledge transforms into a race not against an enemy but against time itself. To fail would mean not only losing Edward, but losing the very center of her existence. As Bella and Alice travel, the contrast between them sharpens. Alice is composed, moving with the efficiency of someone who has faced countless dangers across centuries. Bella, in contrast, is frantic, her emotions raw and uncontained. Yet together, they form a partnership that balances urgency with precision. Alice uses her foresight to anticipate the possibilities of Edward's actions, while Bella clings to her conviction that she can reach him in time. The race becomes as much about faith as about speed, faith that Edward will hesitate long enough, faith that Bella's voice will matter more to him than his despair. The title Race is literal, reflecting the frantic pace of their journey across continents, but it also carries a deeper emotional weight. It is a race against Edward's hopelessness, against the inevitability of the Volturi's judgment, and against Bella's own fear that she will arrive too late. The urgency is heightened by the knowledge that Edward is not waiting for rescue, he is seeking death. To win this race is not simply to prevent an act but to restore his will to live, to prove to him that her existence still anchors his. The journey itself mirrors Bella's transformation. For months she drifted passively, letting time slip by without purpose. Now she throws herself into action with unrelenting focus. Her grief, once paralyzing, has become fuel. Every moment in the car, every shift of landscape as they move closer to Volterra, is infused with the weight of what is at stake. She does not think of herself as brave, but her determination reveals a strength born of love. For Bella, fear of losing Edward outweighs fear of death, and this truth drives her forward with an intensity that borders on ferocity. Alice, though calm, is not immune to the gravity of the situation. She knows the Volturi, knows their power and their merciless adherence to law. Even with her foresight, the path is precarious. The future shifts with every decision, every second lost or gained. Yet Alice does not falter. Her loyalty to Edward, her care for Bella, and her belief in the possibility of success sustain her. Together, the two young women become a force of will and urgency, propelled by love and fear toward a confrontation that neither of them can fully imagine. The emotional stakes of this journey echo the themes that have defined Bella's story. For so long she has lived with the agony of absence, clinging to memories and illusions to keep Edward alive in her heart. Now she races not to preserve memory, but to preserve his existence. The shift from passivity to action marks a turning point in her growth. She has moved from being the one who needed saving, to the one determined to save. Her desperation is not reckless this time. It is purposeful, fueled by clarity rather than illusion. The idea of the race also speaks to love itself. Love is often portrayed as timeless, unhurried, infinite, yet here it becomes a matter of minutes and seconds. The urgency reflects the fragility of even the deepest devotion, showing how easily despair can undo what has taken years to build. Bella's determination to win this race is not only about saving Edward's life, but about preserving the love that has defined her very sense of self. As the car speeds closer to Volterra, the weight of inevitability hangs heavy in the air. Bella knows that the Volturi do not forgive, that Edward is risking not only his life but the safety of all he loves. She knows too that she may fail. Yet failure is unthinkable. Her entire being narrows to a single purpose: to find him before it is too late. The race then becomes more than a plot of movement across distance. It becomes the clearest expression of her love, her refusal to let grief dictate the end of their story. Chapter 20: Volterra. The road to Volterra carries a weight unlike anything Bella has faced before. The Italian city, steeped in centuries of history, becomes the backdrop for the most critical moment of her life. Every detail of the journey, Alice's controlled urgency, the frantic speed of the car, the looming knowledge of the festival underway, heightens the sense that she is running out of time. Edward's plan has been clear from the start: step into the sunlight before human eyes and force the Volturi to intervene. For Bella, that image is unbearable. The thought of him standing exposed, glittering in the midday sun and then being torn away forever, is enough to strip her of fear, leaving only raw determination. Volterra itself seems to conspire against her. The narrow streets are clogged with festival-goers, their crimson cloaks flowing in eerie symbolism. The townspeople celebrate St. Marcus Day, commemorating the driving away of vampires centuries before, unaware that true vampires still linger in the shadows. This festival, meant to honor deliverance from monsters, becomes the stage for Edward's defiance, and for Bella it is a cruel irony. The very crowd that cheers for victory over creatures like him could become the unwitting witnesses to his destruction. The clash of ancient myth and living reality adds another layer of tension to Bella's desperate race through the streets. The atmosphere inside the city contrasts sharply with Bella's state of mind. Where she is frantic, pushing against bodies and fighting through the press of people, the festival is carefree, celebratory, drenched in red banners and laughter. The joy of the crowd underscores her desperation. She is the lone figure, aware of what is at stake, struggling against the tide of merriment that threatens to slow her down. It is not only Edward's life that hangs in the balance, but also her chance to prove that her love is stronger than his despair. At the heart of this chapter lies the collision of choice and consequence. Edward's choice to reveal himself is born of grief and the mistaken belief that Bella no longer lives. His despair has driven him to reject eternity, choosing annihilation over enduring pain. Bella's choice, by contrast, is to fight for life, to cling to the bond they share, no matter how impossible the circumstances. The urgency with which she moves through the crowd embodies her refusal to let love end in tragedy. Every step forward is an act of defiance, not only against Edward's decision but against fate itself. The moment Bella finally sees him, standing in the shadows of an alley preparing to step into the sun, crystallizes the themes of the story. Edward has always been associated with restraint, control, and denial. Here, stripped of those defenses, he surrenders to hopelessness. Bella, who once seemed fragile in comparison, becomes the force of survival. She throws herself into the role of savior with a courage born of desperation, reaching him not with grand declarations but with the urgency of presence. Her voice, her touch, her insistence that he cannot leave her cut through his despair where reason could not. The physical setting intensifies the moment. The ancient walls of Volterra, stained with centuries of history, seem to close in as Edward and Bella collide in their struggle over life and death. Time slows as she reaches him, her human warmth against his immortal coldness a reminder of what he still has to lose. The irony of the scene is profound. Edward sought to die by revealing his nature, yet it is Bella's humanity that saves him. Love, fragile yet fierce, becomes the counterweight to despair. Alice's role in this sequence highlights the necessity of both foresight and action. Her visions warned them of the danger, her guidance brought them to the city in time, but it is Bella who delivers the final blow to Edward's hopelessness. Together, they show the balance between knowledge and will, between planning and the raw force of love. Without Alice, Bella would not have known where to run. Without Bella, Edward would not have had a reason to stop. The chapter also introduces the looming shadow of the Volturi, the rulers of the vampire world. Though not yet fully confronted, their presence is palpable. Edward's plan relied on their inevitable intervention, and with Bella's arrival, their attention is now drawn to her as well. What should have been a private moment of salvation is instantly complicated by the awareness that greater forces are at play. The Volturi are not simply a law, they are power incarnate, and Edward has placed himself and now Bella in their sights. The tension in Volterra is more than the tension of a lover's reunion. It is the tension of colliding worlds, the human and the immortal, the personal and the political, the intimate struggle between despair and love, framed within the ancient authority of vampire law. Bella's victory in reaching Edward is only the beginning, for saving him from his own decision has now entangled her in the larger consequences of his actions. What follows will test not only their bond, but their survival in a world where love is not enough to shield them from judgment. By the close of this chapter, Bella has proven what she could not for months, that she is willing to fight for Edward with every ounce of strength she possesses. Her desperate sprint through the streets of Volterra is not just a rescue but a declaration that their story is not over. Yet as the red banners wave overhead, and the shadow of the Volturi lengthens, it becomes clear that the price of this moment of salvation will be reckoned with soon. Chapter 21 Verdict. The reunion in Volterra is fleeting, for Edward's surrender to despair has already drawn the Volturi's attention. What began as a desperate race to stop him from exposing himself in the sunlight transforms into a confrontation with the very rulers of the vampire world. Their intervention is not born of mercy, but of necessity. The Volturi do not negotiate, they enforce. In Edward's defiance and Bella's interference, they see a breach of order that must be weighed with absolute judgment. The personal struggle of two lovers now stands before an ancient court whose concern is not love but secrecy, power and control. The Volturi are unlike any adversaries Bella has encountered. Where James and Victoria embodied predatory violence, the Volturi represent authority itself, draped in civility but rooted in brutality. Their presence radiates inevitability, as though centuries of dominance have stripped them of any hesitation. To meet them is to feel the weight of law made flesh. Aro, with his eerie charm and unsettling delight in the thoughts of others, becomes the voice of this judgment. His touch can strip bare the private mind, making secrets impossible and intentions irrelevant. Marcus, silent and dispassionate, sees the bonds between people, reducing even the deepest love to something quantifiable. Keys, sharp and severe, hungers for punishment, viewing leniency as weakness. Together, they form a tribunal that embodies permanence, an institution as old as memory itself. Bella's humanity unsettles them. In her mortality, they glimpse both danger and possibility. She knows their secret, yet she remains alive, her blood carrying temptation that threatens their law. Aro, intrigued by her immunity to certain gifts, views her as a puzzle worth solving, perhaps even preserving. Keys sees her existence as an intolerable risk, one that demands immediate eradication. Marcus, apathetic yet perceptive, senses the depth of her bond with Edward, acknowledging silently what others struggle to articulate. Their verdict, however, cannot be swayed by sentiment. For the Volturi, order is the highest law, and every deviation demands reckoning. For Edward, the moment is agony. He had chosen death to escape a life without Bella, but now, standing before the Volturi with her hand in his, he faces a fate worse than annihilation, her destruction as well. His resistance flares again, not in despair but in defiance. He will fight, even knowing the futility, because to stand silent while they weigh Bella's life is impossible. His protectiveness collides with their indifference, and his refusal to bow to their authority becomes another mark against him. To the Volturi, Edward's devotion is not noble but reckless, a threat to their dominion. Bella, thrust into the center of this ancient tribunal, discovers a strength she had not imagined. She does not collapse under their scrutiny but stands firm in her plea, insisting that she be spared. Her words carry no authority in their world, yet her presence itself is an act of resistance. She, the human among immortals, refuses to cower. Where Edward sees inevitability, Bella sees possibility. Her courage is not born of power but of love, and in that defiance, she unsettles even those who claim detachment. The true verdict is not spoken in simple words, but in the shifting balance of interest and control. Aro, intrigued by Bella's potential, delays her execution, insisting that her transformation into a vampire would resolve the breach. Keyes presses for immediate death, wary of the danger she represents. Marcus, ever distant, offers no resistance to either view. In the end, survival is purchased not by justice but by fascination. Bella lives because she is extraordinary, because she is rare, because the Volturi see her as an asset rather than a liability. Yet this reprieve comes with an unspoken sentence: she cannot remain human forever. Her existence as she is cannot be tolerated indefinitely. The encounter with the Volturi shifts the story's scale. No longer is it simply about the love between Bella and Edward, or the dangers posed by individual enemies. Now their relationship is bound to the laws of a larger world, one ruled by forces indifferent to their desires. The Volturi are not villains in the simple sense, they are order embodied, guardians of secrecy and power who will not bend for the sake of love. In facing them, Bella and Edward are reminded that their story is not only personal but political, not only intimate but cosmic. The gravity of this judgment leaves its mark on all three. For Edward, it is a reminder of the fragility of rebellion against the immortal order. For Bella, it is an initiation into the reality of the world she seeks to join, a warning that eternity carries not only beauty but chains. For Alice, who stood with them as both guide and witness, it is confirmation that the Volturi's gaze is now fixed on Bella, a gaze that does not release once caught. Their departure from Volterra does not carry relief, but a heavy awareness that survival has been granted conditionally, and the price of defiance will always linger in the shadows. In naming the chapter verdict, the weight of judgment extends beyond the Volturi's decision. It captures the reckoning of each character with their own choices: Edward's despair, Bella's resolve, Alice's loyalty. It reflects the way love is tested not in quiet devotion, but in the face of power that seeks to dismantle it. Though they escape with their lives, the verdict is not one of freedom but of inevitability. Bella's path toward transformation is no longer merely a desire, it has become a demand, one she cannot ignore without risking everything. Chapter 22: Flight. Leaving Volterra is not the relief Bella once imagined it would be. The physical escape from the Volturi's lair does not erase the gravity of what occurred inside those ancient halls. Every step away from the city is weighted with the awareness that their survival was conditional, that their reprieve was not born of mercy, but of curiosity, and that the eyes of the Volturi will never truly look away. The festival still thrums outside with its banners and revelry, a jarring contrast to the grim tension pressing on Bella, Edward and Alice. For the crowd the day is a celebration, for them it is the aftermath of a narrow escape from a death sentence. Edward's presence at Bella's side is a fragile comfort. She clings to him with the intensity of someone who nearly lost everything, yet the memory of his despair lingers in her mind. She cannot forget how close he came to stepping into the sunlight, how willing he was to embrace an end without her. Even as they leave Volterra, she fears that his willingness to give up could resurface, that the bond she holds so dear is still vulnerable to the weight of his guilt and self-loathing. Flight, then, is not only from the Volturi, but from the shadow of doubt that continues to haunt them. For Edward, the escape is complicated by shame. He knows the danger he placed Bella in, knows how easily his recklessness could have destroyed them both. The relief of her presence is mingled with the torment of responsibility. He loves her beyond reason, Yet he cannot ignore that his love has made her a target for the most powerful vampires in existence. The journey away from Volterra becomes a meditation on that conflict, his desire to protect her against his awareness that by loving her, he has already endangered her more than any human life should endure. Alice remains a stabilizing presence, though her visions continue to flicker with possibilities that unsettle her. She understands the Volturi better than either Edward or Bella, and she knows what their survival means. The Volturi do not forget, and they do not release their grip once it tightens. Bella's fate is sealed, not by choice but by decree. If she is not transformed, the Volturi will see her destroyed. Alice's calmness masks her concern, but beneath her composure is the knowledge that Bella's humanity is now a countdown, one that cannot be ignored without consequence. The journey itself mirrors the emotional turbulence between Bella and Edward. She leans toward him, desperate for reassurance, while he pulls inward, consumed by his own turmoil. Their flight from Volterra may have reunited them physically, but emotionally they are still worlds apart. For Bella, the escape is proof that they are meant to endure together, that love can survive even the most impossible circumstances. For Edward, it is a reminder that he nearly cost her everything and that his love, however sincere, is not enough to protect her from the dangers of his world. The chapter's title, Flight, operates on multiple levels. It is literal in their urgent departure from the Volturi, but it is also symbolic of the tension between running from danger and running from truth. Bella sees flight as victory, as proof that they have outpaced death. Edward sees it as retreat, a temporary escape that cannot change the inevitability of what was set in motion. Their perspectives diverge, yet both are bound by the reality that the Volturi's verdict still hangs over them, shaping every choice they will make moving forward. This tension deepens Bella's determination. She knows now that her humanity is fragile, her life too precarious to withstand the scrutiny of immortal law. Where before she longed to be transformed for love, she now understands it as survival. If she remains human, she is a liability not just to Edward, but to everyone he loves. This realization does not weaken her resolve, it hardens it. She no longer asks whether she wants to become a vampire but when, and whether Edward will accept what she sees as inevitable. The escape from Volterra closes one crisis but opens another, shifting the narrative from immediate danger to the reckoning that lies ahead. Their survival forces them to confront questions that can no longer be delayed. Can Edward accept Bella's transformation? Can Bella endure the dangers of remaining human? Can their love withstand the demands of a world that punishes vulnerability with death? These questions accompany them as heavily as the Volturi's gaze, ensuring that their flight is not toward peace but toward another reckoning waiting just ahead. The crimson banners of Volterra fade into the distance, but the weight of what happened there clings to them. They move forward together, yet the future feels uncertain, suspended between desire and fear, hope and inevitability. In escaping the Volturi, they have not escaped their judgment, they have only carried it with them into the next chapter of their story. Chapter 23: The Truth. The frantic energy of Volterra fades into a quieter but no less intense reckoning. For months Bella lived with the wound of Edward's absence, convinced that his leaving was proof that he no longer loved her. Every sleepless night, every empty day, every hollow attempt to keep moving forward had been built on the belief that his love had been extinguished. Now, with him beside her again, the silence between them feels unbearable until the truth is spoken. The rawest wounds are not those left by the Volturi, but by words spoken in the forest when he walked away, and it is here, away from the chaos of Volterra, that Bella insists those words be unraveled. Edward's confession is not simple. He admits that everything he told her when he left was a fabrication, a cruel mask designed to convince her to move on. He believed that removing himself from her life would protect her, that she would heal faster without him than if he remained and continued to endanger her. His deception was born of love twisted by fear. Yet, in confessing this, he also acknowledges how deeply he underestimated her. Far from healing, she was shattered, her life reduced to survival in the absence of the one person she could not let go. His lie had not preserved her, it had destroyed her. For Bella, the revelation is both salvation and devastation. To hear Edward admit that he never stopped loving her is the balm she has craved for months, the one truth she believed her heart could not hope for. Yet it also reopens every scar, because it confirms that her suffering was not inevitable but chosen. He made the decision for her, denying her the right to fight beside him, condemning her to anguish under the pretense of protection. The relief of knowing his love never wavered is bound inseparably to the fury of knowing his choice nearly cost them both everything. The chapter pulses with the theme of truth, as both liberation and burden. Lies, however well-intentioned, created the gulf between them, and honesty becomes the only path forward. Yet honesty is painful because it forces them to confront the cost of Edward's decision. He must admit to the arrogance of believing he knew what was best for her, and she must admit to the depth of her dependency on him, a dependency that frightens even her in its intensity. In speaking the truth, they are forced to face the darker edges of their love, its recklessness, its desperation, and its power to both heal and destroy. Edward's guilt saturates every word he speaks. He cannot forgive himself for the months Bella suffered, nor for the danger he drew her into with his actions in Volterra. He calls himself selfish, reckless, and weak, framing his confession not as justification but as an apology. For him, the truth is not merely an explanation, it is an admission of failure. His love, though unwavering, has caused harm again and again, and the weight of that knowledge threatens to crush him. Bella's presence is both his salvation and his condemnation, reminding him of what he almost lost, and of the damage he inflicted in trying to save her. Bella, in turn, must grapple with what the truth demands of her. She has longed for Edward's return with every heartbeat, yet to accept him again means accepting the pain his choices caused. Her love does not waver, but it must now be rebuilt not on illusion but on reality. She cannot deny the depth of her need for him, nor the cost of that need. The truth forces her to see that their love is not a gentle story but one marked by danger, sacrifice, and scars. Still, for Bella, the knowledge that he never stopped loving her outweighs all else. To her, the truth, however painful, is worth everything. The setting of this conversation underscores its intimacy. They are no longer racing through crowded streets or standing before the Volturi, they are simply two people stripped bare by honesty. In the quiet aftermath, words matter more than action, and vulnerability becomes the truest test of their bond. For months, silence and lies defined their relationship. Now it is words, the unvarnished truth, that begin to restore what was broken. The significance of this truth ripples outward. It reframes everything that came before: the numbness of Bella's grief, the recklessness of her stunts, the hallucinations of Edward's voice, the despair that drove him to Volterra. Each moment was not born of absence but of misunderstanding, of two people suffering separately under the weight of lies. In exposing the truth, they realign, finding in each other again the anchor that despair had stolen. Their reunion becomes not only physical but emotional, grounded now in the clarity they had both avoided. Yet the truth does not resolve everything. It illuminates new questions. Can Edward forgive himself enough to remain with her? Can Bella accept the risks that come with loving him, knowing now that those risks are not imagined but real? Can their love, raw and intense, endure the scrutiny of both human frailty and immortal law? These questions remain, hovering over their fragile reconciliation, but for the first time in months, Bella and Edward face them together rather than apart. By naming this chapter The Truth, Meyer captures the paradox of revelation. Truth is painful, cutting away the comfort of illusions, yet it is also the foundation upon which trust can be rebuilt. For Bella and Edward, truth is both wound and healing, both accusation and absolution. It does not erase the past, but it makes a future possible. In their fragile honesty, they rediscover not just love but the willingness to fight for it, no matter the cost. Chapter 24 Vote. The aftermath of Volterra does not dissolve into peace, but sharpens into confrontation. Bella, having faced death and the judgment of the Volturi, knows with absolute clarity that her humanity is no longer sustainable. Remaining mortal is not only dangerous, it is impossible. The Volturi's warning was not subtle. Her transformation into a vampire is inevitable, whether by choice or by decree. To delay is to invite destruction. With this knowledge burning within her, Bella turns to the Cullens not as a guest or an outsider, but as someone who must now secure her place among them. Her request is simple in words but seismic in implication. She asks for a vote. Each Cullen must decide whether she should be turned into a vampire. For Bella, this is not just a matter of desire but of survival. She frames it not as an act of romance but as a necessity, recognizing that the Volturi will not forget the promise Edward offered in Volterra, that Bella's mortality will be temporary. By demanding a decision, she forces the family to acknowledge openly what has long lingered unspoken, that she cannot remain human without endangering them all. The Cullens respond in ways that reveal their deepest loyalties and philosophies. Alice, unsurprisingly, votes in favor, her visions having already shown her a future where Bella belongs among them. She sees Bella's transformation not as a loss but as fulfillment, an inevitability that has always been waiting. Jasper, who has struggled with his self-control, surprises Bella by siding with her as well, admitting that her choice would make their lives easier by removing the temptation of her mortality. Rosalie, however, opposes the idea, not out of cruelty, but out of bitter honesty. She warns Bella that immortality is not the fairy tale it appears to be. To Rosalie, who mourns the human life she can never reclaim, Bella's eagerness is reckless, blind to the weight of what she will lose. Emmett, true to his nature, casts his vote with humor and loyalty, offering support without hesitation, trusting Bella's choice more than questioning it. Carlyle, as patriarch, offers his perspective with quiet compassion. He sees Bella's transformation as a matter of moral responsibility, knowing that the Volturi's decree leaves them no other choice. His vote affirms not only Bella's survival, but her place within the family. Esme, moved by love and care, echoes his sentiment, unable to imagine their household without Bella woven into its fabric. The family's collective decision then tilts toward her favor, a symbolic adoption that acknowledges her as one of their own even before the transformation occurs. Edward's voice remains the most conflicted. To him, the decision is unbearable. He does not deny that Bella's humanity puts her in danger, but he cannot accept the loss of her mortality. To Edward, her humanity is her soul, and to strip it away is to condemn her to the same cursed eternity he despises. His love for her is fierce, but it is entwined with his guilt and self-loathing, leaving him torn between preserving her safety and preserving her essence. For Bella, his resistance feels like betrayal, a refusal to see that her desire is not reckless longing but an informed choice made in the face of mortal danger. Their conflict sharpens here, with her fighting for a future she believes is necessary, and him clinging to a vision of her humanity as sacred. The vote itself symbolizes more than the outcome. It marks Bella's transition from passive participant to active agent in her own fate. For so long decisions have been made around her, Edward's choice to leave, Jacob's choice to distance himself, the Volturi's choice to spare her conditionally. Here she demands a say, not only in her own survival, but in how she will belong to the family she has chosen. Her insistence is an act of empowerment, showing that she is no longer content to be protected, deceived, or dismissed. The result of the vote does not end the conflict but reframes it. Bella has secured the support of the family, but Edward's resistance ensures that the road ahead will not be simple. The Cullens' agreement affirms her place among them, yet the emotional chasm between her and Edward deepens, for his love drives him to fight against the very future she longs for. What should be a victory feels complicated, tinged with the awareness that unity is fragile, and that the transformation she desires will demand not only physical change but emotional reconciliation. The title vote underscores the collective nature of this decision. but it also highlights the deeper question of agency. Bella's future is debated and decided not by fate but by choice, hers and the family's. In forcing the matter, she transforms from the girl swept along by supernatural forces into someone who asserts her will against them. Yet the victory is incomplete, for love itself remains divided. Their escape from Volterra may have spared their lives, but the question of what life they will share remains unresolved, resting uneasily between the weight of Edward's convictions and Bella's determination. Epilogue Treaty. The fragile calm that follows the chaos of Volterra and the tension of the Cullens' vote is disrupted by the return of another force that has shaped Bella's life, the Quilute wolves and Jacob most of all. If the Volturi's decree represents one binding law, the treaty between vampires and wolves represents another, and Bella now stands at the intersection of both. Her longing to join the Cullens collides with the fragile truce that allows vampires and werewolves to coexist in uneasy peace. The epilogue forces the private decisions of love into the broader realm of community, law and loyalty, showing that no choice Bella makes is ever truly hers alone. Jacob's presence carries both comfort and sorrow. He has been the one to piece Bella together during Edward's absence, his friendship the thread that kept her from collapsing entirely. Yet in this new reality, he stands as both ally and adversary. His feelings for her, unspoken but unmistakable, deepen the pain of her decision to choose Edward, and the bitterness of betrayal lingers in his voice. Still, he cannot fully turn from her, for his care runs deeper than his anger. The boy who once made her laugh now embodies the cost of her choice. By embracing Edward, she risks not only her humanity but her bond with Jacob as well. The treaty itself looms as an external barrier. The Quilute wolves have long tolerated the Cullens' presence on the condition that they do not create new vampires. Bella's transformation, though necessary for her survival, would constitute a breach of that pact. To Jacob, the promise of her transformation is not just a personal loss but a violation of sacred law, one that could unravel the fragile peace his people have guarded for generations. In his eyes, Bella's choice is not merely about love, it is about loyalty to the world she comes from, to the humans and the community she risks abandoning. Edward, caught between his resistance to Bella's transformation and his hatred of hurting her, must now confront the reality that her desire extends beyond personal longing. The Volturi's scrutiny and the Cullens' vote have placed her on a path that cannot be delayed, yet the treaty threatens war if it is fulfilled. The contradiction mirrors his own turmoil. To preserve Bella's life as a vampire may mean igniting conflict with Jacob's people, while preserving the treaty means leaving Bella vulnerable to mortal danger. His love, already strained by guilt, is further tested by forces beyond his control. Bella's perspective, however, remains clear. For her, the choice is not between Edward and Jacob, or between vampire and human, but between life and inevitable death. The Volturi's ultimatum leaves no room for compromise, and her desire to join Edward's world is not only about love but about survival. Yet this clarity does not make the cost easier to bear. She knows she is asking Jacob to endure heartbreak, to watch her walk away from the life he offered, and perhaps to fight against her should the treaty be broken. The grief in his eyes mirrors the grief she once carried, and the weight of that knowledge presses on her even as she refuses to turn back. The epilogue closes with tension unresolved, not in triumph but in fragile balance. The Volturi's demand, the Cullens' decision, and the Wolves' treaty form three intersecting lines of obligation that cannot all be honored. Bella stands at the center, her humanity already marked for ending, her love pulling her toward eternity, and her ties to Jacob anchoring her to a world she must leave behind. The peace that exists is temporary, a silence before inevitable conflict. By calling the closing section treaty, Meyer underscores the reality that love does not exist in isolation. Bella and Edward's bond is no longer simply a matter of personal devotion, it is bound to laws older and stronger than either of them. The treaty represents a compromise, but it also represents the limits of choice. Bella's desire to become a vampire is not only her own but a decision that could fracture the world around her. The epilogue, then, leaves the story not with a neat resolution but with foreshadowing of struggles to come, reminding us that love, however fierce, cannot escape the weight of law, loyalty, and consequence. Conclusion. The story of New Moon begins in the shadow of absence, and ends in the presence of fragile but undeniable love. Across its arc, what unfolds is not simply a continuation of Bella's romance with Edward, but a deep exploration of what love costs, how grief transforms, and how truth reshapes even the strongest of bonds. The journey from birthday celebration to confrontation in Volterra traces an emotional landscape where despair, loyalty, and courage collide, leaving each character marked by change and each relationship tested by forces greater than themselves. At its heart, the novel is about survival, not survival in the physical sense alone, though danger is ever present, but survival of the self in the wake of heartbreak. Bella's world shatters when Edward leaves, and for months she lives as a shadow, surviving not through joy but through routine. Her spiral into emptiness shows how profoundly love can define identity, how absence can hollow a life. Yet within that hollow space, something resilient emerges. Through Jacob, she rediscovers fragments of laughter and comfort, proof that healing is possible even in brokenness. Her friendship with him is more than a lifeline, it is a counterpoint to her despair, a reminder that life still offers warmth even when it feels impossible to grasp. Jacob's role in the narrative underscores the theme of choice and consequence. His loyalty and growing love for Bella reveal an alternative path, one grounded in humanity, companionship, and a future unmarked by immortality's curse. Yet Bella's heart remains tethered to Edward, no matter how strong Jacob's presence becomes. This triangle is not just about romantic tension, it reflects the pull between two worlds. On one side lies safety, family, and human belonging. On the other lies danger, eternity, and a love that defies logic. Bella's choice is both deeply personal and universally resonant, the willingness to embrace risk for the sake of a love that feels like destiny. Edward's arc is defined by guilt and redemption. His departure, meant to protect Bella, becomes the very act that endangers her most. His despair in Volterra mirrors hers in Forks, showing that their suffering is a mirror image, each breaking under the weight of imagined loss. His willingness to die when he believes Bella is gone reflects the destructive depth of his love, while his return, marked by confession and vulnerability, highlights the necessity of truth. Edward's struggle is not only to love Bella but to reconcile his love with his fear of damning her soul. In him, love and guilt are inseparable, creating tension that neither words nor promises can easily resolve. The confrontation with the Volturi elevates the story from personal grief to cosmic reckoning. Their presence reminds Edward and Bella that their love is not simply their own but something watched, judged, and constrained by ancient powers. To love across human and vampire divides is to invite scrutiny from both worlds. The Volturi's verdict, sparing Bella only on the condition of her transformation, forces the inevitability of her choice. No longer is immortality a dream or romantic longing, it is survival. What was once Edward's fear becomes Bella's determination, and the stakes shift from desire to necessity. The vote with the Cullens and the echo of the Quilute Treaty reveal the communal dimensions of Bella's choice. Love is not lived in isolation, it reverberates through families and communities, binding or fracturing them depending on the decisions made. The Cullens' willingness to accept Bella as one of their own affirms her place, yet Jacob's grief and the wolves' resistance remind her that every choice comes with loss. The treaty embodies this truth. To choose Edward is not only to choose immortality but also to risk war, to sever ties with those who have stood by her. Every gain carries a cost, and every choice leaves someone wounded. The power of New Moon lies in its willingness to dwell in that cost. Unlike the intoxicating first rush of Twilight, this second installment dwells in absence, silence, and despair before allowing love to reassert itself. It is slower, darker, and more painful, but in that pain lies growth. Bella emerges not as the fragile girl Edward left behind, but as someone who can stand in the Volturi's hall and argue for her place in his world. Edward returns not as the flawless savior but as a man scarred by his own mistakes, forced to admit that love cannot be dictated by protection alone. Together, they face a future more complicated than the past, marked by inevitability rather than possibility. The title itself, New Moon, captures the essence of the story. A new moon is the absence, the darkest phase of the cycle when light is hidden but not extinguished. Bella's journey mirrors this, a descent into darkness so profound it seems endless, followed by the faint glimmer of returning light. The cycle promises that even when light is lost it will return, altered but enduring. In this metaphor, the story assures that grief does not erase love but transforms it, reshaping both those who endure it and the love they cling to. In the end, New Moon is a story of brokenness and mending, of lies unmasked by truth, and of love tested not by ease but by impossibility. It does not offer neat resolution. Instead, it leaves Bella and Edward standing on uncertain ground, bound by love yet shadowed by the Volturi's demands and the Wolves' Treaty. It is not the fulfillment of their story but the reforging of it, tempered by loss, sharpened by despair, and made stronger by survival. As the story closes, the lesson is not that love conquers all, but that love endures when all else conspires against it. It survives absence, despair, and judgment, not because it is easy, but because it refuses to let go. In Bella and Edward's reunion, flawed and complicated as it is, lies a truth that resonates beyond the page, that even in the darkest nights light waits to return and love once kindled fights always to endure. This has been the summary of New Moon, summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Archie.